bricks, stone, steel, glass. Everything, in fact, is made of atoms. Atoms are tiny, way too tiny to be seen individually, so how were they discovered? Well, we've seen that experiments in the 1700s revealed to scientists that some substances, like hydrogen, and oxygen, could not be broken down into anything simpler because they weren't themselves made up of anything else. These kinds of substances were called elements. Other substances, though, called compounds, are made of elements which chemically join together. Carbon dioxide and magnesium oxide are just two examples. Now, many scientists did start to suspect after all these experiments that everything must be made of tiny, tiny individual and indivisible particles, or in other words, atoms, which join together in groups. This can has a small amount of water in it. If I heat the can up, the water boils and the steam comes out of the can. To allow you to see it more easily, we shot this scene with some dark paper behind the can. If I then plunge the can upside down into a container of cold water, the can crushes. We often think of air as something that just kind of floats around, but it's actually a little more complicated. Experiments like this one, not exactly the same of course, but similar, suggested that the air is made of tiny, tiny particles that constantly bounce into each other and onto things around them. These collisions of the trillions of tiny particles on a surface cause air pressure. We now know that the particles, the atoms, move hundreds of meters per second, but travel only a few tiny, tiny fractions of a millimeter between each collision. We also often think that air, and gases generally, don't weigh anything, but they do. Just because these balls are flying through the air and bouncing around all over the place doesn't mean that they have no mass or weight. Likewise, the atoms that make up gases also have mass, and every time they collide with other atoms, they exert a small force.